Some of the individuals that Jesus helped have no real name listed in the scripture. Their healing, though miraculous, may not really be recorded in the books for posterity. Good morning. This is Pastor Ernie Lewis of the Blue Point Church in Sisney, Illinois, with your thoughts for Thursday. While Jesus was traveling in his earthly ministry, he came to Jerusalem one day to a very famous pool near the sheep gate. It was called Bethesda. And there were many lame and diseased laying around the pool because there was a legend that an angel would sometimes come and enter the waters and stir them up to provide a healing. And the first one to enter into the pool would be healed. Well, John tells us this certain man, who goes unnameless, was laying by the pool when Jesus came along that day. And Jesus asked him the question, "Do you want to be made well?" So the man began to explain that he was unable to reach the pool. When the waters were stirred, he had this infirmity for some 38 years, which kept him from being healed. So Jesus saw him lying there helplessly, and Jesus had compassion on the man. And he said to him, "Rise, take up your bed, and walk." And the Bible tells us that immediately the man was made well. He took up his bed and walked away. Now, there were other problems in the story with this healing, mostly because it was done on the Sabbath day. And the Jews didn't even allow this man to carry his bed on the Sabbath day, let alone go through healings or whatever because of their rules. But it is amazing that some people miss the miraculous because they're not in the position to see what God is doing in that person's life before he changes them. One thing we learn about God's work in the area of miracles is that we first must find ourselves in a crisis before we can really see God at work to change our course. You take the Old Testament children of Israel. They were backed up against the Red Sea by this great and powerful army of Pharaoh before they could ever see God's miraculous hand of deliverance where he parted the waters for them to cross. So if you don't mind, I'd like to share my story today, just a little bit. I've been relatively healthy all of my life. No hospital stays, no surgeries, not even regular doctor visits for so many years. But in May of 22, I was found to have a cancerous tumor in my colon. So the doctors went in and removed that, and they actually said we took out the tumor and everything around it. There's absolutely nothing there. You're declared cancer-free. No treatments or anything. Well, until October, I had a follow-up CAT scan that found a new spot on my liver. But they really couldn't explain what it was, so they actually did an MRI that would explain. That didn't tell enough, so they went back and did a PET scan. Each time, they saw the spot, but it wasn't glowing under radiation like cancer normally does, although they assumed it was cancer. So they sent me to a surgeon in St. Louis. In December, he went in, removed that spot from my liver so that he could examine it. This week, we went back and got the report from the doctor in St. Louis. He said, first of all, the spot had been cancer, but the cancer cells were all dead. He couldn't really explain it. Either my body had beat back the cancer, or the explanation was above his pay grade, For some reason, this cancer had died on its own. He even took this before a surgical panel of some of his associates, and they had no answers for the phenomenon either. He actually said, in the old days, we would probably call this a miracle. So my wife and I explained to him, in these days, we're also going to call that a miracle, if you don't mind. Because sometimes it takes a crisis in our lives to see God's powerful healing at work. But don't get me wrong, he is still there, and he is still healing, apparently.